Welcome to The Right Focus, a podcast for writers, newbies, and veterans, and everyone in between. We're hosted by M.A. Lee with the assistance of Remy Black and Edie Rooms, all from Writers Inc. Books. Our focus is productivity, process, craft, and tools. Each episode lasts as long as it takes to fix a quick dinner, drive a short commute, or take a brisk walk. Resources and links are in the show notes. Visit us at therightfocus.blogspot.com. Now, on to this week's episode. It's the Summer Writing Challenge. Welcome to our fourth week of June, our advance with tiptoes in July. We've had a major problem because my speakers and microphones aren't working on my laptop, so I've had to make adjustments. So the sound may be slightly different during the middle of this episode. How is your challenge progressing? Mine has problems. Worked out a solution for mine. Share your goal and progress, problems and solutions, and successes in the comments section. Our interview this week is Judy Penz Sheluk. As a quick tip, I chatter about writing a coherent story, and the episode finishes with the check-in. Here we go. Quick tip number 4. How do I make my writing form a coherent story? Well, use patterns and models. And when you use those patterns and models, start adjusting them to your story to create a unique twist. The foundations of character building and plot structure are the same and have been the same for thousands upon thousands of years. Every decade or so, new terminology comes out, but the essence remains constant. Beats, acts, pivot points, they're all based on the pattern and model best called archetype. These are worldwide patterns, which means your audience for this story will be worldwide. For plot, use the archetypal story pattern. First presented to me in Christopher Vogler's Writer's Journey. You can easily find the whole thing on the internet, or you can buy the book. I have the book. Most of the new stuff about writing that has come out since Vogler's seminal book just builds on his source. And Vogler's source was Joseph Campbell, who built on Carl Jung. You can't go wrong with Carl Jung. The archetypal story pattern creates a roller coaster plot flow with suspense and tension built in. It's like waves on the shore. They come in, some go far up the beach, some barely make it onto the beach, some go midway up the beach, and the pattern is arrhythmic in that it's constantly changing, but it remains a steady pattern, a rhythm. Most writers talk about beats, which is built on Freytag's pyramid, which is an artificial constraint on story. Others talk about TV tropes, warnings, use a strong theme so that the tropes don't create a mishmash of scenes. Whatever you use to develop characters and plot, write your basic story. When that rough draft is complete, then consider tropes and check that your story is following the beats. You'll discover that the archetypes not only kept your story on track, but also moving from beginning to middle to end, even through that dreaded saggy middle. Hello.
Hi. I'm just trying to get everything organized here. Let me turn off my mail. It'll be binging and banging the whole time. And I'll just make sure my phone's on whatever, because that'll be the time that I get a phone call, which I never get.
Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, they come on at the most inappropriate times, don't they? So I'm just trying to. So I finally got this graphic of my books and everything. So because I did a
behind
podcast.
you, it looks great.
Yeah, and my friend said, "You don't have anything behind you." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll get this." So yeah, so it's got like my little award thing on there, but I've already got another book and another award, so I gotta update it. But anyway, it's a good idea. And that
Yes, it is
I
a
do
good
have a
idea.
bookcase, but it's not that exciting, right? So so anyway, yeah. Hi.
Okay, hi, Judy. Where are you based?
Where am I what?
Based. Where are you located?
Oh, Northern Ontario. So, Sault Ste. Marie. So a direct, like I literally live 5 minutes from the US border, which would be the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, also Sault Ste. Marie, but that the UP they call it. Yeah. So
Right.
that's where I'm from Toronto originally, but I've been living in the north for about 5 years, I guess. And before that, I moved around, but always like within a couple hours of Toronto, right?
Mhm.
And
Right.
where are you located?
I'm in East Tennessee.
I could tell that you definitely are not Canadian. So yeah, I'm hoping that this year I get to Killer Nashville. I was signed up for it last year. And I had kind of planned, I've never been, I'm a big country music person. I've never been to Nashville, and Killer Nashville is actually in Franklin, which is a bit outside, I
Yes.
guess. But
Very close though.
I'll come a couple days early and I'll spend a couple days in Nashville. And I had, all the places I wanted to go, Garth Brooks Bar and all these other crazy things.
You write cozy mysteries, is that correct?
I do. I write cozy mysteries, and I've also written 2 books on publishing.
Hmm.
Uh, so I wrote, so if you look at the background that I have here, the top white row is the Glass Dolphin mysteries, and the next row is the Marketville mysteries, and then the next row is the anthologies, and then the last row is the 2 books on publishing. One's on finding your path and one's on self-publishing. It's the finding your path that's won 2 awards.
Okay, great, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so the topic of this series is challenges. How
Yeah.
do you approach that idea of challenges in writing?
Okay. So yeah, you asked. Okay, so you want to know how I
Whatever you think about
okay.
challenges.
All right. So what I thought I might go with is a story that I thought might resonate with a lot of authors. Because when I signed my first publishing contract, it was back in 2014. It was with a Mystery Writer of America approved publisher, so not some fly-by-night operation. And it was a 3 book deal for the Glass Dolphin Mystery Series. And so the first one came out in 2015. And the publisher was wonderful. The process was great. I mean, I can't say enough about how good that first experience was. But even though it was really a good experience, I had heard of people that had been orphaned, the industry term for the publisher closing down or getting rid of authors. And so I thought, well, I don't want that to happen to me. And I had started a second series, the Marketville series, which is more of a cold case mystery series. It's still on the cozy side, but cold cases. And so I thought, well, I don't want that to happen to me, this orphan thing. So I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket. So I found another publisher. They weren't Mystery Writer of America approved. They were a Canadian publisher, but I'd heard very good things about them from other authors that were with them and were really happy. So when they had their window open, I applied and they took my book on. So I was feeling by 2016, I was feeling pretty good. I had 2 publishers, I had 2 series, life was good, right? Except that 2017, I started noticing things with the MWA approved publisher. The royalty payments started getting delayed.
Oh,
The communication started being quite poor from good. Then she decided she wasn't going to do advanced reader copies anymore. Then there were publishing delays, like, well, we can't do your book now, we're going to do it. And so I'd been a journalist for many years, then an editor for magazines for some time. And so I kind of knew the signs of when something's going under. I'd worked for places that had gone under. And
mhm.
so I sort of thought, that's not good. And at the same time, the Canadian publisher, she was facing health issues. And so she had decided that she was going to gradually release all her authors until she was just self-publishing. And so because I was sort of the last in, I was the first out. Right now, I will say I was lucky. Both of the publishers treated me very well. I got my rights back. I got paid whatever they owed me. So I was very, very lucky. But even though I was lucky and with both of those, now I'm faced with a real challenge, right? What am I going to do? It's 2018. Both my publishers have dropped me, right? And I've got a book that I've written in both series and other books that have been, they're not going to be sold, even if they're on the market, nobody's going to be able to buy them kind of thing. So I had to figure out what I wanted to do with that. And I thought I could find another small press that would maybe take on a book that had already, been acquired by another publisher, but that's going to be difficult. I could give up on both the series, but I didn't want to. The 3-book one, I really love the last book and how it sums everything up. And the Marketville series, I love that. I love that character. I love my main character, Callie, and I'm actually working on the 5th book now. So I didn't want to do that. So I thought, well, my only option is self-publishing. Now, when I started in 2014, that had a real stigma. But now, by 2018, things were already loosening up. So I thought, I'm going to start an imprint, and I'm going to start by putting up the books that had been published. So I had new cover art made, and so those weren't so challenging because most of the heavy lifting had been done, and I just had to find a cover artist. But the heavy lifting then came when I had to figure out, okay, how am I going to format a book? How am I going to, get these new books out? How am I going to start doing promotion and all of that sort of stuff? And so it was it was a challenge. But in the end, I would say that that it was the best thing. What I learned about myself is that I'm very much a control freak. I don't like people telling me what to do, which is why I don't work 9 to 5. And so for me to be able to sort of say, yeah, I'm going to release it here, I'm going to do this cover, whatever, it's worked out. And so the last sort of challenge I took on was I thought, okay, I don't want to take on other authors. I'm at the point in my life where I've got way more in the rear view than the front view mirror. So I don't want to be like doing to other people what had been done to me, which is basically shuttering my doors in 5 or 7 years or whatever, right? It didn't seem fair. But I thought I could do an anthology, a multi-author anthology. So I called it The Best Laid Plans, and it did great. It sold great. I had pretty good response. Like I think I got about 70 submissions and I picked 20 stories. I did everything outside of the cover art, which I hire out. I did the formatting, I did the editing, I did the proofreading, I did everything. And I paid the authors. So everything was kind of a risk because I didn't know if I'd ever get my money back. But I did. And so since then I've got 3 more released, so 4, and I have a 5th one coming out in June. And the one that came out last year, Larceny and Last Chances, is actually up for a Best Anthology Derringer Award. So I find out May about that. So yeah, so it's validating, right? And the reason I did it though was because I wanted to give the press legitimacy. And by doing that, it gave it legitimacy, but not to the point where I was starting to take your books and the guy down the street's books and all that. And then in 2023, I had a year off between the anthologies, and I just thought I just need a break from those. And what do I want to do? And then I had a serious health scare. I had breast cancer, so I was sort of sidelined, and it was my second bout of that. I had it earlier in 2008, so I wasn't too excited about it making a reappearance. But I just felt like, well, I can't write a story because I don't really have that brain space. But I also don't want to just sit around and feel sorry for myself. So I thought, well, I can write a book on publishing paths because I know about those. I've done traditional, I've done self-publish, I've done social, I've done these paths, right? I know what I'm talking about. And I used to be a journalist, so I can research. So that's how the publishing books came about. I did the first one and it went well, so I thought I'll just do one on self-publishing. So they're told conversationally, not, it's like this is what I did. You might not want to do that. It didn't work out so well, And so I think they've been really well received because they're spoken in language that people can understand.
Mhm.
And people that may, and I'm not telling you do this or do that. I'm saying, here's what you need to do if you want to do this. Up to you if
Right.
it's right for you or not. But I can't tell you if it's right for you. Right. So that's kind of, so I've had challenges. I had a health challenge and I had orphan challenge. And so I just sort of think if you have a challenge, you try to find a way to make it work in your life. You can't, because if you don't, then if I hadn't done something that year, then the cancer would have won, and that wasn't going to be an option for me, right? Absolutely not.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so that's what I think. You can't be a victim.
Hmm.
You just have to say, I can do this, and then you do it.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way it goes. When I taught for 30 years, um, high school and college composition and general literature knowledge. Um, and when I started publishing in 2015, and I had all this non-fictional knowledge about the writing craft,
Yeah.
and it was nothing was happening with it. And I thought, well, you don't want to let it go to waste. You've got all this knowledge. You should share the knowledge. And that's how my nonfiction books came to be. Um,
Okay.
and that's actually how this podcast came to be. I ran out of things to say in book form, and I thought, well, I'll start saying it in podcast form.
That's
uh,
good.
and so I have branched out and started doing interviews, which are a big challenge for me because I don't like to talk. That makes it a little hard. How else do you see challenges in your writing? Do you have any challenges with the process itself or with craft or anything like that?
So I would say no. When I'm working on a project, um, like a book, I try to do a chapter a day. That's my goal. Now I tend to write short chapters, like 700 words. You'll never find a 2,500, 3,000 word chapter in any of my books.
Mhm.
And there's a couple reasons for that. One, I want to finish a chapter in a day, and two, I like books that have short chapters. Like I find that if it's short, I can go, okay, I'll read another one before I go to bed. But if I look at it and I go, oh God, it's 12 pages, then it's like, forget it, right? Not going to do it. So when I'm on a project, I try to write a chapter a day. And as soon as I've written that chapter, whether it's 300 words or 700 words, that's it. I don't write any more that day because I want it to stay fun, right?
Right.
I worked in the corporate world for years and it wasn't fun. And so I wanted to stay fun and I want to stay creative. And so that is one way that I stay connected. And I always say to people, I try to write every day, even if it's a Sunday or my birthday or whatever, even if it's only 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, because it's like if you're reading a book and you read it today and you read it tomorrow, and then the next day you don't really have time, the next day you don't have time, and then the day after that you pick it up and you can't remember what it was about, right? And you got to go back, like, okay, well, who was Sally again, right? So I kind of look at writing that way. And I don't even like people say, well, do you get writer's block? And I guess I do like anybody, but I don't consider it that. So what I figure is if I'm stumped, like if I'm sort of sitting there looking at my blank page for an
Mhm.
hour and going, I really don't know what I'm doing. It's like your subconscious saying, you've gone the wrong way. You got
Mhm.
to turn around and find out where you made your mistake before you get too far down the rabbit hole, right? So it's your mind, your inner self saying to you, don't fall down that rabbit hole. You had Emily doing this. She would never do that. Why would you have her
Mhm.
do that? So then you got to kind of go back. So I really think when I do face one of those blocks, I think I treat it as like, okay, where did I go wrong that
Right.
now I'm blocked? And sometimes it means deleting one of those or two of those chapters that I was so proud of or finished. I
Mhm.
go back and I think, you know what, that doesn't really belong. Maybe it belongs later, or maybe it just doesn't belong at all. And so, as Stephen King would say, kill your darlings, right?
That's
But
true. If I find myself really working a metaphor, I think, whoa, whoa, this is a darling. You need to get rid of it.
yeah, yeah. We can fall in love with our own
Hmm.
words very easily, and it's often the ones that we've labored over the longest.
Hmm.
Thinking we're so clever, and then somebody else will read it and go, "Well, that was all good, but that to me was just not right." And you're like, "What?" That's the one I'm the most proud of, right? So I think every author goes through that, every writer goes through that, but I think as we write more books we recognize it, whereas the early author doesn't, right? I certainly didn't, but 9 books in, I can see when I'm falling down the rabbit hole. Whereas in the first book, I didn't, you just don't. So I think, I do think that's part of it. But I think with anything, if you're faced with some sort of a challenge, or then you've got to figure out why or how to get around it. Like, why did the challenge happen? In the case of writer's block, you've made a mistake. If in the case of having a health issue, well, that just may be bad luck. So what do you do? How do you navigate so that you still have a life, right? And so you
Right.
figure out those things. And then, not to say that I haven't sat down and watched a sad movie and sobbed because it felt good, but I don't watch a marathon of sad movies. And as a matter of fact, if I'm really sad, I always watch The First Wives Club because it never fails to make me laugh. I just love that movie. So I got good old Goldie, Bet, and Diane Keaton. I mean, the three of them are so great.
Yeah.
And I just love that movie because it just makes me laugh, right?
Yes.
So if you're sad, I recommend The First Wives Club.
Or Mamma Mia.
Oh, Mamma Mia is
That's
another good one.
hilarious.
Yeah, you can sing along even.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for talking about challenges in your writing. Do you have anything? This will probably come out in June.
Okay.
Do you have anything that you want to specifically promote? You mentioned something coming out in that air around that
Yeah,
time.
so June 18th, Midnight Schemers and Daydream Believers is the name. It's a 22 author anthology. I have one story in there, and there are 21 other authors that are in the publication, and it's already on pre-order, so it'll definitely be whenever this airs, it'll be up. And yeah, I'm really excited about it. There's some repeat authors from other anthologies, and there's some new authors, and there's one author, it's her first story. So when I'm picking the stories, I don't care who the author is. I care, do I like the story? Do I connect with
Right.
it? And I'm also really fairly picky in that I understand that if you're writing about policemen, that they're not going to go, oh, poop. But I also don't think that you need to use a lot of profanity, right? So
Right.
I'm really pretty careful. I say to the authors, I don't want crazy violence. I don't want profanity because I want anybody to be able to read it, even if it's a book about mysteries or
Mhm.
I don't need anything graphic and gory. There's lots of that stuff. Read that if you want, but I want something that's sort of PG, right? So
Right.
so I'm careful about the type of stories that I choose. I mean, it is a dark, I mean, let's face it, it's a lot of them, it's like there's a dark side to them, but I think you can have a dark side and still, I think, be respectful of,
Right.
people's feelings and opinions, right? Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. Tell me the name again. I bet that
Midnight Schemers and Daydream Believers.
Midnight Schemers and Daydream Believers.
Believers, yes. And if they were looking for it, you could go to books2read.com. So that's books with a number two,
Yep.
read.com/midnight dash schemers. And that would take you to, Amazon, Kobo, Barnes and Noble, everywhere it's going to be, right? So yeah, so I'm really excited about it because it's a very strong collection, and I'm hoping to win the Derringer, but you never know. The one lady that I'm up against, she's sort of like the Meryl Streep of the Oscars, you know what I mean?
Oh
She wins
dear.
everything. So I'm not that optimistic.
All right. Thank you so much, Judy.
Thank you very much. It was nice talking to you, Emily.
And I hope you make Killer Nashville this year.
I do too. Fingers crossed.
Fourth check-in time, covering June 18 to 24. Again, we needed 4,949 words for the week to put us at 16,968. I missed 3 total days this week. And on the 7th day, I only managed 501 words. Where does that put me? June 18, I had 1,020 words. June 19, I stopped writing. I did planning for the fall series for the Right Focus podcast. I like to work ahead, but this was planning, sketching out ideas, doing some drafting, very general, basic, sketchy kinds of things. If someone looked at it, that would not make any sense whatsoever to them, but I understand my notes to myself. I have multiple pages. I gave myself credit for words at 1,400 because I'm packing today and it's scattered ideas with 30 minutes here and an hour there and so on, multiple times, over and over again. Several pages of works, ideas, rough sketches, draft, etc. Then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, every one of those days off. No writing at all. A lot of thinking, which may have helped my creativity because when I came back on Monday, sat down and immediately poured out 1,130 words. Tuesday, though, with a lot of interruptions and errands to do because the pantry is bare. 501 words. That gives me for the week, when I needed 4,949 words, almost 5,000 words, I only achieved 3,151 words. Last week, I had 14,167 total words with 3,151. This week, I am at 17,318. So I'm 350 words to the good. Next week has to be good work. Has to be. I have to get a lot done so that I can catch up and I can get this novella written in the time frame that I have set aside for myself. How is your writing goal going during this challenge? Are you achieving what you need to achieve? Have you had disruptions, planned trips at which you didn't get to write at all, but maybe ideas swirled and swirled? Share that with us in the comments. Thanks for listening to The Right Focus, a podcast for writers at all levels, hosted by Emma Lee from Writers Inc. Books, assisted by Remy Black and Edie Runes. Our focus is productivity, process, craft, and tools. Music is licensed through Audio Jungle, called Background Music Loop. Its creator is Alexander Polishchuk, known on Audio Jungle as Plastic 3. The music comes in different iterations. Show notes and resource links for this and other episodes can be found at therightfocus.blogspot.com. Write to us at winkbooks@aol.com when you have questions, comments, and speculations. We will try to answer you as quickly as possible. By the way, we will not mind your email address. That's rude. If you find value in our content, share with your writing friends or write a review. We're small beans here without the advertising budget of the big peeps, and you can make a difference. And whatever occurs, write on.